Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. We are closing out the show today with a very special guest, Airbnb CEO and co-founder who's had a few things going on in the last couple of months, Brian Chesky. Brian, thank you so much for joining us.
Well, thank you for having me today, Emily.
So you've been a public company now for 7 or 8 weeks. We've got a vaccine rolling out slowly. When the pandemic hit last year, you said you felt like you had been hit by a torpedo. So just where's your stress level right now between like zero and torpedo? What's going on inside your brain?
If I was a captain of the ship, the waters are a little calmer than they were last year. There's nothing quite like being a CEO of a travel company and you lose 80% of your business in 8 weeks as you're preparing to go public. And if that's not crazy enough, then going public as that company, that's also pretty wild. So it was a very eventful year last year. I'm hoping for a little bit more predictable year this year.
So on that note, you've got a new report out on travel trends in 2021, and you said you can't look too far ahead, but you can give us a picture of this year. What is travel in the year ahead and the waters, essentially? What do the waters look like to you?
Yeah, so I think that what's going to happen is you think about where we are today. Most people have been in their homes and they haven't really been able to leave their homes very much for nearly a year. And this travel season, people will mostly have been sheltering in place for more than a year, working from home. And we did a survey, a representative survey of American travelers, and they told us a few things. The first thing they told us is they miss traveling. In fact, Americans miss traveling more than any other outdoor activity. Second, Americans are telling us they actually are planning to travel this year. 54% of Americans surveyed said they either already are planning their trip or plan to travel this summer. But something's going to be different about how they travel this summer. You see, the thing people don't miss is business travel. They say the travel they miss the least is traveling for business. They don't miss landmarks. They don't miss crowded lobbies. They don't miss getting on double-decker buses. What they miss is, the thing they feel like was taken away from them, connection to their family and their friends. So the kind of travel they want is meaningful travel, not mass travel. They want to have meaningful time with their friends and family. And so they want to get in cars in America and travel within a tank of gas about 200 miles, typically staying in small communities with their friends and family. I think that's what travel is going to look like this year, a shift from mass travel to meaningful travel. And I do think it's going to be really eventful, certainly summer for travel.
Okay, so summer is your time frame when you think things start to open up, and when that happens, does it look like the Roaring '20s? I mean, give us the picture.
Well, it's a little hard to say. Anyone who was in the business of predicting, I said in my letter, anyone in the business of predicting the future was humbled last year. So I'm going to try to stay within the constraints of what we think will happen. I think it's going to be gradual. And, it's hard to say what month it's going to happen. I use summer for a proxy. For the moment, people feel safe leaving their homes. I think vaccinations are going to be critical. One of the two of the top reasons people want to get vaccinated is they want to see their friends and family and be safe, and they want to travel and be safe. But one of the things they want to do is they want to travel to places where they're either private, not around a lot of people, or in cities and communities where most people have been vaccinated. So I think it's a little hard to predict. I think it's going to be really moving in line with the health crisis. But yes, the Roaring '20s did come after the Spanish flu. And so I think people are yearning to get outside and to be together. I think you can't keep people apart for too long. And I think that's something that we're going to learn again.
So we should be booking our summer vacations now to avoid the crush, is what you're saying.
Well, who knows? I'll try to not predict too much. The good news is I don't think everyone's going to be going to the same city on the same date. I think because people are more flexible and they're working from home, they can kind of take, I don't think you're going to have this flood of everyone going on the same week to Las Vegas or Miami or LA. They're going to probably, because not as many people will be flying right away, be distributing to more communities. So I think we're going to see is more people going to more places over more dates. That's going to spread out travel, which will probably reduce crowds. That's what I think will probably happen. Now, these are just predictions, of course.
Now, Brian, my interview with you on IPO day went kind of viral. I told you live on the air that the opening price had doubled, and we all saw your eyebrows go up really high. What was going through your head in that moment?
Well, first of all, I did not know my eyebrows went that high either. But what was going through my head was just, I don't know, at that moment, I think it was kind of a flashback of the last year. Because I remember we started 2019, or sorry, 2020, like a lot of people did, thinking their life would be one thing. And then all of a sudden, our stock just goes down significantly. Probably in the depth of the crisis, our stock was, just a little over $20 a share. And, we had got all hands on deck, and we said, we're not really going to worry about things we can't control. We're going to focus on trying to truly build a great company. And I think at that moment, I think the year crystallized for me. The year crystallized everything we did and everyone that believed in us. And it all probably, I think, really hit me at that moment.
So Airbnb last year, in one of those private funding rounds, was valued at $18 billion. Now it's a $113 billion company. In your view, is Airbnb really worth that? You're the guy who has to deliver and make it so.
Well, I don't want to comment on a stock price. I think it's going to get a dangerous pattern for me to start doing that. But I will say that we are building a company for the very long term. I know that probably sounds like a cliche, but I'm 39 years old. So I do intend to be doing this for decades to come. And, I don't want to get into comment of stock price, but I will say that the higher the price, the higher the expectations, and the higher expectations, the more responsibility we feel. So I think we already felt a lot of responsibility before, but I now feel a lot of responsibility for all the new stakeholders, all the new shareholders we have. And, that just motivates us even more.
Now, when this happened, Airbnb, as you said, went back to its roots, focused on homes and home sharing. You put some things on hold: business travel, luxury, hotels, transportation. Are there any plans to restart some of those initiatives?
Oh, sure. I mean, like, down the road, we will. But the thing we are realizing right now is we do think a travel rebound is coming. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. No one knows exactly when, but we want the company all hands on deck, focused on this new travel season. And so we think we have a great core business, and that business really is hosting. We have 4 million hosts offering homes and experiences, and we want to make sure that we have as many hosts ready this summer as possible, this travel season as possible, and make sure anytime they need assistance, we're there for them. So again, down the road, we think there's a lot of new opportunities for Airbnb, but I think the thing that got us out of the crisis was focus, and we're not going to forget that lesson.
So, you're now a public company CEO. How has life changed for you, for the company, in the last 8 weeks?
It's like a bunch of my friends who got married, and they said, like, their life didn't change that much after they got married. I guess after kids they do, but in that way, everything just feels a little bit more formal. But other than that, we've been operating like a public company for quite a long time. We've had an audit committee. We had a lot of the same kind of controls you'd expect as a public company. Our financials seem to get out every quarter anyway, even as a private company, and not not for any intention of our part. So I just think the main difference is just the sense of formality when you're a public company, and just the sense of responsibility is just so much more vast. Certainly when venture capitalists and mutual funds and private equity firms are investing in you, you do feel that responsibility. But when there are hundreds of thousands of shareholders who are kind of like the people you grew up with, I don't know, especially our host, there's a different level of gravity to it. It just feels like a whole nother stakeholder, essentially.
Obviously, the hosts are really important to Airbnb, the Airbnb community. Also, there's employees. You laid off 1,900 employees last year. Now that things are better, how many of those jobs have you actually brought back, and where? Like, where are you putting your new resources?
Yeah, so you're referencing the hardest decision I've ever had to make when we had to lay off 1,900 of our employees. The first thing I'll just say is we tried to do everything we could for those employees. And one of the novel things we did is we created an alumni directory. An alumni directory meaning that we allowed anyone that was laid off to opt in to have their information published on our online directory. We had more than 500,000 visitors to that online directory. And so actually what we found, and we've done some surveys of former employees, is that quite a few of them actually been hired in other positions at other companies, and they do seem to be doing quite well. Now, we have hired a handful of employees back, and we do intend to continue to hire employees back. But the other thing I've told our employees is you want to, hope for the best and plan for the worst. And we don't know what's going to happen again. I don't want to ever have to do another layoff. So we're still being fairly cautious about the pace of bringing people back. But I'm very optimistic we'll bring a lot of people back down the road.
Now, anecdotally, as a user, I've noticed that customer service has really improved, and you've been working on building out the customer service infrastructure. That said, customer service has often been cited as a risk factor because, can the customer service of Airbnb really stack up to what you might get at a hotel, for example? Can you talk to us about the resources you're devoting there and how you think that'll evolve as Airbnb becomes a bigger and bigger company?
Yeah, it's a great question, Emily. I mean, we have a great team that leads this. And last year, last summer, I hired a woman named Tara Bunch. She actually ran all customer service and Apple Care for Apple. And she managed a very large team there. We brought her in, and she took a team that I was already very impressed with. They've taken, I think, things to the next level. And that's part of what it means to be prepared. We don't want to just have best-in-class service. We want to have truly world-class service. And so we're working all hands on deck to make sure that when the travel rebound comes, and again, we don't know exactly when, we want to be ready. We'd rather be early than late. And so we just want to make sure that we have great service. And one of the things we're seeing in the hospitality industry is many other companies are starting to cut back service. As they cut back costs, they cut back services. We want to be doing just the opposite. We want to be increasing service and investing even more. We think now is the time to be investing in making sure that every stay is as great as it can be. So really perfecting every detail of our service. That's what we're focused on right now.
So speaking of the broader hospitality industry, we had the CEO of Hilton on earlier this week at this conference. In the third quarter of last year, we saw Marriott revenue, Expedia revenue drop 57-58%. For Airbnb, it was more like 18%. And I wonder, when travel does come back, even more than it already has, are hotels harder hit? Will some of the hotel travel just never come back?
Well, I think the way to think about it is to think about the types of travelers. I think you could break it up into leisure and business, leisure, typical vacation business. I don't think that business travel is coming back the way it ever was. It doesn't mean business travel is not coming back. It's just, I think people are going to rethink getting on a plane for a meeting. Sometimes you'll do that, but we're starting to realize that a lot can be done remotely. A lot of your first interviews with me were in person. Now this interview is being done remotely. So I think what's going to happen is business travel is going to contract. It's not going to come back to the way it was. I do think a new type of business travel will emerge. If you have a lot of people working from home and distributed, they do eventually want to see each other in person. We're not going to live in a world where no one sees each other in person. So you're going to have more of this hub and spoke model where people go back to headquarters for longer trips. So I think old business travel will be replaced by new business travel, but I think that will be longer stays and less frequent. And so I don't think business travel will be as strong. I think leisure travel will go up increasingly because the more you're home, unless you're traveling for business, the more you want to get out of your house, and more people have flexibility. And so I think that will increase, and I think that's going to really increase length of stay. And so I think that will be a difficult transition, moving away from business travel and towards longer stays. But that being said, anyone that can adapt can win in this environment for sure.
Now, online experiences, you've really been building out that platform. I've seen, like thousands of reviews for a virtual tour in Paris, or my son is super excited about the Harry Potter magic tour in Edinburgh. What kind of growth have you seen there since COVID? And can you keep that up post-COVID?
Yeah, I mean, the way we started online experiences was really, the idea came from our host. We have experiences which are 3-hour activities in person. Because of the pandemic and social distancing, we had to pause that product last year. And an idea came from one of our hosts in the listening session. They said, what if we just did these online? People don't need to leave their house. And so we launched these 1-hour online activities. The whole idea is there's a sense of connection. It's not like watching YouTube. You actually can do a pasta making class, you can watch a concert, but you're interacting with the other guests and the people, typically done through Zoom. We've seen a lot of growth since then. And one of the things we found is it's a bit like dipping your toe in the water of Airbnb. If going to a different city or get a different town and staying a stranger's home feels like a big jump for you, kind of getting used to Airbnb with an online experience remotely from your home is, I think, a really great introduction to the community and gets you more comfortable with what a host is, how the whole system works. So that's one of the things we think is really strategic about this product.
Now, If anything's for sure, it's that we don't know what, as you say, potentially even tomorrow looks like. We had a few moments of calm after the inauguration, but the year's already gotten off to a crazy start. You made a big call in canceling reservations in Washington, D.C. the week of inauguration. You reimbursed hosts for the money that they would have made. You've also paused political donations to lawmakers who voted against election certification. Can you give us any update on that? And, the responsibility that you feel to make stands on political and social issues that we haven't seen CEOs make in the past?
Well, I learned an early lesson in this because when I came to Silicon Valley in 2007, 2008, the idea was we were all platforms and platforms should be hands off. And the idea, and it kind of was like this old kind of eBay, Craigslist, Pierre Midyar, Craig Newmark school of thought. The internet's kind of like an immune system. Build the community tools and they will moderate themselves. I think that Airbnb, we learned lessons earlier than big tech companies because we had people getting their homes trashed. We had people getting physically hurt or worse. And we started to realizing that we had to take more responsibility for the activity on our platform. If for no other reason to keep people safe, that's a very good reason to do that. And so we've been doing this for a very long period of time. We really try to make sure that we're strengthening the communities we're in. We're not always right, but we want to be on offense. In Charlottesville, Virginia, we got word a number of years ago that we had people in far-right groups, members of hate groups, essentially, that were trying to book Airbnbs, and we prevented them. We did our very best to prevent them. We have an entire operation trying to prevent people that are part of groups that are classified as hate groups booking on Airbnb. What we saw with the Capitol raid was something that was shocking, and we felt like there were just too many reservations and too many people to screen and discern, what people's intentions were. And we thought the very best thing for safety that we could do, after having consulted the governors of Maryland, Virginia, the DC mayor, and the police borough, was that we should just not allow people to book Airbnb that week. I mean, obviously, we didn't want to contribute to any mayhem or violence. And so I feel like that was the right decision. It was frankly kind of an easy decision at the end of the day. I mean, you always have to side with health and safety.
Now, we can't ignore the biggest story of the day, which is what's happening with GameStop and Robinhood and what seems to be a movement of the center of gravity from institutions to potentially the people. I'm curious how you're reading this. As a public company CEO, is this kind of volatility and unpredictability unnerving?
I've tried to tell our own employees, let me put it this way. Our company is now used to volatility after last year. I mean, very few companies had more volatility than Airbnb last year. And so I think that we're not going to be unnerved personally by volatility because we're looking at the very long term. And I tell people, you focus on what you can control. Now, I do think it's a great thing that more people can be able to participate. That's kind of the whole idea of Airbnb, that more people are able to participate in hospitality. And one of the things we saw is a lot of people are participating as Airbnb shareholders. Now, as far as anything beyond that, probably best not for me to comment. Certainly, I'm not an expert in this matter. But I do think that, I got a lot of phone calls from people when we went public, people I hadn't heard of in a couple decades, people I went to high school with, teachers saying they purchased stock. And, I think I feel an immense responsibility to all of them. And I do think that, one of the benefits of having a great brand is a lot of people want to be a part of it and they want to own a piece of it. And that just means that, your responsibility is increased. I think that the responsibility of a CEO in America today is different than it was maybe 10 or 20 years ago. I think maybe a couple decades ago, very narrowly, most CEOs felt like their responsibility was solely and exclusively to shareholders. I don't think there's many large CEOs today that feel that way. I mean, the Business Roundtable, you had hundreds of CEOs sign up saying that they believe their responsibility is more than just to shareholders. Their responsibility is to other stakeholders. Of course it is. The best thing for shareholders is that society wants your company to exist in the future. That is the very best thing for shareholders. And that means the people have to be happy with your company. They're going to be evaluating you, the decisions you make, whether you ban reservations to see how you deal with some of the greatest ills of society. And I think the people are watching, and I think that we have to remember that our responsibility is to everyone.
So given that we are in a rapidly changing political and economic landscape, a new administration, vaccines on the way, what is your outlook on this year? If 2020 was the year of a pandemic and a recession and a torpedo, what's going to be the theme of 2021?
And are you asking about just the world, or or are you asking for Airbnb? Because
The
for
world, according
Airbnb,
to Brian Chesky.
oh God, for Airbnb, it's going to be a year of focus. But for the world, it's going to be a year of hope and togetherness. That's what it's going to be. You know, some things, think about what COVID did. COVID has probably accelerated many industries by 5 or 10 years. What it's really done is digitized a lot of things, right? So many things are now digital, and digitization, in a sense, is like acceleration of numerous industries. And so a whole bunch of things that were popular might go out of fashion. We can guess what's not coming back. I'm certain one thing is coming back: human connection. You can't keep people apart forever. People will be together again. And I think when we are together, we're going to realize that we maybe sometimes took each other for granted before, when we were together, when we didn't have everyone. And so I think there's only so many social media connections, digital connections, and Zoom calls that you can do. Eventually, to fulfill you, you need to have real in-person connection. And I think when we have that, we're going to have a better spirits, a lot more hope, a lot less division. I mean, this is the optimist in me. And I think the best thing to kind of help unify people is to help them walk in each other's shoes and help them be together again. That's the very best thing I can think of.